Did not make it easy for myself to get in here. It is another brisk, rainy day here in the Pacific Northwest. It's a good day to get some work done. Yeah, you hear that cycling on and off? We need to fix that. So first things first, why is it doing that? Well, these are still the original radiator fans. They are not only 24 years old, but they have amassed 233,000 miles in that time. And to make matters worse, when I built the engine, I did an entire AC delete. And if you're familiar at all with these cars or this platform, you'll know that the fan control module is a bit of a sensitive relay that talks back to the ECU and has a few other sensor dependencies, including sensors associated with the AC system. So by removing that, if not addressed, the fans don't know what to do anymore. And since then, they've been cycling on and off. Now, the reason it hasn't been addressed is because it has not caused any cooling issues. The car cools itself great. And yeah, it's just never been an issue from that perspective. However, and I would arguably say that this is actually kind of worse, it puts an intense electrical load on the entire electrical system of the car. So knowing that these cars already have some electrical issues that just over time things start failing, I have only expedited that. So as you'll soon find out with many more episodes that are to come, we're gonna start going through a lot of the things that I kind of just let go because they were working. They weren't working at their best, they could have been better, but they weren't posing immediate drivability issues that were preventing me from enjoying the car. And because of that, that kind of spiraled out of control, and now we're here. So we're dealing with a lot of things that are kind of broken, primarily my fault for letting them go. So yeah, we're gonna address that now. So here's my solution. The plan and purpose of what we're gonna do is we're gonna utilize this sensor, which is a factory sensor. It has got a positive high, positive low, and a ground. So each of these fans are going to be set up to an individual relay that when the low temp triggers, we're gonna fire off one fan, and then when the high temp triggers, we'll fire off the second fan, so they'll both be running. I'm also not going to put a manual fan switch on it to turn these on manually from within the cabin, but we'll play with it. We'll, if we need to, or if we decide that it'd be more convenient to, we can do that later. But for now, let's go ahead and get started to get these installed, or rather get the old ones removed so that we can get ready to get this installed. So here is the source of all the issues. So as you can see, this big one here is the relay for the actual fans. And then these are for all the other sensors and things like that. So I'm gonna have to refer back to some of the documentation. And if it's stuff that I can terminate, we'll go ahead and terminate it. If we have to figure out how to, bridge the gaps, I guess, we'll have to do that too. So now we just need to remove the intercooler. So I'll dump some of the coolant, we'll unclip the front clip, get it supported on something, and then we'll pull everything out. myself a little stuck. Okay. As long as that doesn't move, I can avoid a catastrophe. I'm gonna try to... There was a little bit more in there than I was expecting, but we will deal. I'm just gonna shove this guy in there so it doesn't move. And then we've made a mess. Well, with this out now, should make it really easy to, as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4 screws, obviously matching over here. And you can tell the considerable size difference. So that's gonna be really nice for, I guess, packaging really. Regardless, these should do much, much better than these. Even though I was never able, I was looking for documentation, and if somebody has it or has figured it out, please share it with me. I'm really curious. I don't know what the CFM of these fans are. I couldn't find anything on them, so I have no idea what the performance are of these. I do know that they're quite powerful, I just don't know how powerful. These obviously are documented. I don't remember off the top of my head if they were like 12 or 1700 or something like that. They're something else. But we know how much air these can pull. So yeah, I'm without the information of these, I have nothing to compare. But either way, this will be a nice little upgrade, give us quite a bit more room, and eventually I will be cutting up the hood and I will be creating an extraction vent on there. So we'll have a little bit more room behind, or rather in between the engine and the back of the radiator, to get air to flow out and more efficiently. So even if these do pull more air, the cooling performance of the car should be better overall. And you know, we don't want to rely on the fans 100%, so it shouldn't be much of an issue at all. Let's pull these out. I'm really curious to put these side by side to like, I mean, you can tell enough here, but I am curious to see how big of a size difference this is. Well, curiosity satisfied. So we're saving quite a bit of room. I'd say probably a solid like 4 to 5 inches at least. I'm hoping we don't end up with any detriments, but we'll find out. Another key thing that I kind of want to incorporate into this one, I'll probably do it at a different time, given the amount of room that I actually gain in between the engine and the rad support. I should be able to take care of it with this in situ, so I shouldn't have to take out the front clip to do it. But I'll show you here. Let me turn these guys around here real quick. So as you can very obviously see, in between these two on the factory system, there's a divider, whereas this one does not have it. What we're looking at here is basically a divider to create some kind of pressure, or rather some suction. It's just something to consider. It is something that I'm thinking about doing, so then when I do have the system running on low, if one fan is running, that it can efficiently pull the air strictly through the radiator and through the fan, rather than getting some leaking air coming out from the opposite side and coming from the engine bay up and around and then out the fan instead of through the radiator. So again, just things to consider. May not be a problem, but we won't know until we try it. So I have that to think about. We need to address this mess. So this is the less fun part of the project. Not necessarily dreading it, just haven't really decided how I'm going to mostly take care of it. So first things first, we gotta undo this. I'm gonna reuse this pigtail and we're gonna wire our fans directly to it. So this has got the 3-pin that'll go to the switch, which will give us our high-low signals. These two pigtails go directly to the fans. This one is from the fans to the fan controller, and this is from the fan controller to all the switches in the climate control, the AC, coolant temp sensor, stuff like that. So we gotta undo all of this, and I gotta rip all of this back and then tuck it away. This is all we're after for now.
So for reference, this is all we're going to be simplifying our system for. So you can see this one right here, this cable. This is our signal wire to the relay, which is one pin on our connector. And then we've got a signal high and a signal low that are shared between both fans here. And you can see where they're spliced in. This is a factory harness. And that is where they have their signal high with the higher gauge, signal low with the lower gauge, and then ground. So that's pretty much what we're gonna do with our setup. We're just gonna remove all these other signal wires so we don't have to rely on them.
So I got a touch carried away. Was able to reel it in though, so I am proud of myself. It's not necessarily done, at least what I would consider the harness to be done. But we are going to seal it where it is, just because for the scope of this project, it doesn't need to be done anymore. I just needed to delete a few sensors and pretty much get rid of the factory harness for the fan controller. So we can get ready to wire in the standalone relay and fuse setup that we've got going on. It's going to be temporary. Once the engine comes out, I'll have a lot more room to handle the rest and the remainder of the harness, and then I can sheath it properly and, you know, finish removing some of the wires that just don't exist anymore. Guys, I'm not going to try to depin this and put my own wires in it. I don't have any terminal ends for this switch, so we're just going to splice it into these, and because I'm going to sheath it, you're really not going to be able to tell. It's going to look all pretty factory, I suppose. But the rest of this can pretty much just disappear. And this is what we've got left for the harness, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Like I said, I do want to find a new home for this factory fuse box. I did take it out and I cleaned it, but other than that, I need to figure out like a permanent spot for it. I don't like it where it is, and I do want to open this up later, but again, that's neither here nor there for the scope of the project. So with that said, let's switch over to the bench and start getting this relay set up. Here's the game plan. So on my drawings here, these two on the ends are going to be my reference drawings. So these just give me my pinout locations as well as the relay. The relay being important because when I drew it up here, I just did it based on how I'm going to wire it. This is referencing how I actually am going to see it when I set it up. So you can tell that, you know, here's our flat pin here, there's our flat pin up at the top. So it just makes it a little easier to just look at it and know that I have it oriented correctly. So with that being said, pretty self-explanatory here. Here's our thermal switch that we've talked about a bit already. So as I mentioned before, 3 pins, one's got constant power. That's gonna come directly from the cabin from an ignition switch. And then we have a high trigger and a low trigger. So straightforward, one fan on low, both fans on high. Easy peasy. Now I do have my reservations. I have thought about potentially running a resistor in line, which would allow me to run both fans on low and both fans on high. We would just cut the load in half between the two fans when, you know, low's triggered, and then full power when they're both triggered. Now that introduces a few other challenges. Not anything that hasn't been done before, but not something that I really want to do right now. If we have to do it, we'll do it. But if we don't have to, it'll just simplify things, less things to worry about, less things to fail. So let's get the shroud up here and let's start splicing some things. All right, so we're gonna grab some of these things here. We're gonna grab 2 fuse blocks.
Does bug me a little bit that that it didn't put the 0 on over, so then at least since that stark line there from the heat shrink kind of makes it look funny. But you know, here we are. Well, I have to say that I'm actually really happy with how these turned out. I was really concerned with the packaging in this corner, both with like the hose that's going to go there for the coolant, and then obviously just how I'm going to be turning these and how tight and kinked these might be. But they didn't turn out too bad. Not bad at all, actually. So anyway, this is how we're sitting. So now we've got the thermal switch sits right here on the radiator once we're all plugged in. And now you can clearly see we've got a low trigger to fan 1, a high trigger to fan 2, labeled those easy to see, easy to understand. This is going to be the ignition positive as it is labeled there. I do have to repin the end and that'll go back into the cabin under the dash. Yep, you've seen it before. But what we're gonna do next here, I've got these threaded inserts. I'm gonna drill my 2 holes up here, and then relays will be secured there. I haven't found where I saved all of my OEM clips that I've taken off the car as I've removed stuff, and I was just going to drill a hole, and it's got kind of like the little Christmas tree, but they're meant to hold the wires, so that way those will sit up like this. But as you can see, they do have slots in the back, so I'll be making something so then I can just do the same thing, you know, bolt it onto here with some threaded inserts, and then we just slide both of those guys on there, and then they'll stay situated in place, and it'll keep the cables out of the way. But yeah, so let's start drilling, get those situated, and then I suppose we can put this on our core support and on the radiator, and we'll start test fitting some stuff. So to say I'm super stoked about how these turned out would be a major understatement. These really inexpensive connectors made really quick work of being able to really consolidate all of my wires, making it quick and easy to plug and play. The relay bundle's a little tight, but I am really happy overall with how it turned out and the location of everything. Before I put the shroud back on the radiator support, let me show you some off-camera work I did to prepare all of this plug and play. I'm also really happy with how this turned out. This is going to be a game changer for pretty much anything that we want to wire up in the engine bay. I'll quit rambling and I'll just show you. All right, so check this out. So I have now got a positive terminal and a negative terminal. So now I have a lot of termination points to be able to set all this up. And I have also put the ground terminal here, got that wired up, and then the positive terminal here with the pigtail for the fans. So then once we put the core support on with the fans and everything, we can just plug and play. And really from here, I mean, all that's left, aside from obviously putting it all together, is I have to run the ignition trigger from inside the cabin down here and then out into here. So then we can get it plugged in to our ignition trigger here. Should be pretty easy. It is just going to be a single connector there, so I still got to make it. But let's go ahead and do some movie magic quick, and let's get this all set up, and I'll show you once it's all plugged in. Well, I can't say I'm super thrilled about this, but you know, the cards were dealt. I should have known better, and I should have tested the thermal switch. I had intended to, but I didn't want to drag this process on. I figured it's a thermal switch. How hard could it be? Chances are it's probably not bad. Here I am eating my words. So we got to leave it here. I do have to hit my monthly uploads, and we're cutting it real close for this one. Personal goal of mine, I am hoping to be able to stay consistent with it. So this is me taking what I've got. This was not a success, but I'll dig into it off camera. We'll move on to the next step of the project. So yeah, that sucks, but the rest turned out pretty cool, yeah? So we have continuity to low, and we have continuity to high. And if we check the voltage to both, we can see that we're also getting a complete circuit. So we're getting our 12 volt trigger from the cabin, and it is going through the entire circuit for fan high and fan low. So the only other thing I can think of is that we've got a dud switch. And if that's the case, well, that sucks. Yeah, it turns out the thermal switch in the radiator is bad. So here is fan number 1. And fan number 2. Yeah.